Okay, let's start the record here too. Hello, everybody. I'm Sudha Jamte, and this is Sudha Live. And here we are at our 24th episode. Thank you, everybody who spends your Friday here with me, and with 6 p.m. here in Silicon Valley. And good morning to Asia. And I see people from Singapore and India and several other places bright and early in the morning that you're willing to join me here. So I appreciate that. So what we do here is go for 45 minutes and you can chat your questions wherever you're watching this. I've invited a select few of my students to join here in the Zoom room. And there are people watching on LinkedIn mostly. And I don't know who are these 44 different views I get on Twitter each time. So this streams on Twitter. Hello, if you're watching there. This streams on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So wherever you are, feel free to chat your questions and I will try and respond back to you. And what I do is I'm going to be sharing AI opportunities. So I usually have one topic that I'd like to go in depth and I will share some resources. And then I will share a bunch of jobs and events, fellowship, courses, anything that will help you on your AI journey. And you might be in a different stage. You might be coming at it from some other industry. You might be new to this. You might be a data scientist. You might be a designer, an artist, a business development person. And it doesn't matter where you're joining from in the world or if you're coming and watching this later. So the whole idea is by doing this in a pluralistic way with multiple people is where we get this going for us. Okay, so for those of you who are new here, I want to show you some resources. So I'll be sharing a lot of links, and if you want the actual link, if you come back, watch the video, you cannot capture links. So a lot of people tell me about it. So let me share that screen. So I go to bit.ly. Can you see this? bit.ly/Jamte newsletter. And that will take you to my newsletter archive. Don't want to join it? Come back and watch and just read each week. That's okay too. If you want to join, obviously you'll give your email. I won't spam you with anything else except this newsletter is the one email you'll get once a week on Sundays. And I will put together, a summary of what we did. So last week's link, I'll give you a quick summary. I'll give you the recording of this session. We do a weekly Wednesday with my student alums, so I'll give you that recording. And then all the jobs and events and everything that we are discussing will all be here. And I'm so grateful for each of you who chose to find this time to hang around with me, and for every one of you who keep sending me resources through the whole week and sending me links and topics, jobs especially, and events. This week, November 11th was Veterans Day here in US. And so we had it off. I did not do classes and I did not go attend any of the events, but that seemed like a magical day where there were so many events happening globally. So what I'm going to be doing in this week's newsletter, which you'll receive on Sunday, is to share some of those resources, some of the recordings. And as I share some of them, I myself might go and attend some of these events. So I will share, as a follow-up, what did I find useful? Did I not find it useful? Things like that, right? So that's what you will get from the newsletter and the resources. So you can actually go look at that. Okay. So one of the things we are going to do is, let me see. I'm hearing some people saying it's not streaming on LinkedIn. I'm going to invite them here. Okay. Let me see. You can join me on Twitter if you're missing it out there, and I'll come back and make sure this streams onto YouTube and here on Twitter. I'm finding that. Okay. So I found the Twitter link. I'm going to send people streaming live on Twitter. So join me if you have not seen. Okay, so the topic of today that I am super excited about is about climate change AI. Obviously, we have the COP26 summit going on. There is, a lot of discussion about it, and people saying, we don't have much time, or people who are doing interesting things related to the climate world. But what interests me this time, given my focus on AI, is climate change AI. I'm going to share that so that you can capture the URL. Climate change AI, climatechange.ai did a report. And I'm going to show you the report, and I'll tell you why I'm interested other than climate change. What does that mean for you as an AI opportunity for those of you in the AI world? So the report is called Climate Change and AI Recommendations for Governments. And it has very specific recommendations. They're saying they have 48 specific recommendations for how governments can support the application of AI to climate changes and address climate change related risk that AI itself could pose. So this is new. AI, by doing AI, we are going to create more climate change risk, and what that would be. Can anybody imagine what that would be? Because we are going to be running huge servers. All the AI is running on computers, and especially on huge GPU servers. And it's huge buildings and a lot of energy from that's consumption that's coming. So they're covering everything. And then this particular report was commissioned in partnership with the Global Partnership on AI, GPAI. It's a partnership of 18 different countries and EU. That means 18 countries are not EU countries, 18 countries and EU, and they're bringing different experts from around the globe. So that could be an area if you are an enthusiast, somebody who's working in AI, an influencer in your own world or your own industry in AI, you could participate in that. Okay. They don't have a call for the experts yet. I think they will have an open call early next year. So I will bring it back to you once I find out about it. Okay. So they have several areas that they are looking at. And so this week, one of the things that was interesting for me is they have this national grid about the forecast of electricity demand and the like. They have the UN Satellite Center. They have this thing called Climate Trace, which is a global coalition of organizations. So there's been it's not one set of people, or a select set of countries. The only thing that I found when this report was shared with me was climate change impacts the whole world. And there are countries in the continent of Africa or Latin America who are all impacted by that. I did not see people from there here. So I called out that when this was shared on LinkedIn, and I found out this global partnership on AI had actually called for researchers from Africa with a grant some months back. I think they did that in May. So I don't know what happened to that research. If somebody is aware of it, I would like follow up to hear that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of the share. So if you are working in Africa, if you are a researcher, data scientist, deep learning engineer, anybody who's working on Africa in any form, I would love to hear from you. I would like to connect you with this organization because it would help to think of climate change action to countries in a very holistic fashion, not just represented from certain people who might mean well and have a global perspective. So I'm sitting here in Silicon Valley, and if I give my advice, it is still going to be limited. That is why I'm very, very particular about my classes, my interaction, my travels, everything has to be global. So when I put case studies in my book, I make sure that I cover as many countries and perspectives as possible. So that becomes important, especially when you're thinking about climate change. So I want to tell you something very personal, why I care and how my perspective has changed, from where I came from. So I was born in India, and when I went to high school there, and I came from a city which was, close to the sea. So we had shores, and we had floods when I was in high school. And I think that was one of the first times. And there's been more floods increasingly because of global warming in recent times. But at that point, obviously, given my, couple decades of experience, I came from pre-internet world. And so I was in high school, there was no internet and we could not track weather and do anything. There was no iPhone to track your weather pattern or hour by hour temperature and forecast, or, see where the winds are twirling. We have all those, like today, right? Real time, you can just watch, even if you're curious about the data. So my memory of that is we were not in a flood prone area, but we ended up having to move because the way they did this in India, at least in the place where I came from, is they had waters that were collected in reservoirs, and they would check dam levels. And if the dam is going to get flooded, they will track for it manually, and then they would release the water into the city. And then there was some river that came across the city and would impact certain neighborhoods, and ours was one of them. And so I remember we had to watch that. My parents were anxious about it, and then at some point they said, okay, we need to leave, and we left and came back. Personally, I don't have a trauma from it of what happened. I didn't fear for my life. I was not floating. We came back to our house. Maybe my parents came in and cleaned up the house before we did, so all was good. But 4 years back, I live in San Jose. 4 years back, there was huge floods here in San Jose, and they kept saying, hey, these are all the areas. There were notifications on our phones about different areas that would potentially flood. So now we live in a world with Internet of Things and sensors. So they're tracking where the rain was heaviest, where the water was coming from. They could show us the path of how it was going. And I live near a creek. And so I live in that part of San Jose, which is closer to Cupertino, where Apple headquarters is. So many years back, Cupertino flooded, and so they decided to set up tributaries for those creeks. So I live next to one of those tributaries. So there's always the risk that could get flooded. And in rainy season, we've been in a drought for a long time in California, unfortunately. I've seen the waters raise, and we have like ducks and stuff show up there. So we were watching, and they were telling us what is coming. And the water might come and, it could raise. At one point, I remember getting an alert saying, between this time and this time, the water could flood, and there was no other action. There was nothing on what we could do about it. And then the next message was, this area is not impacted, this other area is impacted. So we were tracking our friends who were living in a different part who were impacted, and they had to go to shelters and stuff. So I was just thinking the contrast of, what it was in the pre-internet world, pre-world of sensors, and now we track everything. And what they did is they could track the levels of water rising in each of our canals, because they have sensors for that too. So now we have sensors like that on the road. We have sensors for everything, right? So the IoT sensors are creating so much data. So all the data is feeding AI. So when we think about climate change, people always think about predicting the wind patterns, predicting where there would be, flooding, right? Or you could think about energy saving and say, hey, can we be energy efficient in what we are doing, and measure it and know that. So this week, because of that, I'm coming at it from a place where I'm thinking about it as flooding or energy saving. So I have solar panels up on my roof, and I don't want to be spending more energy, and I want it to be sustainable. So I'm just thinking I'm the good guy, and I'm doing all that I can for climate change. But if you read this report, you will find so many different possibilities. Obviously, it's recommendation for governments, but you would see so many different possibilities of how you could get involved, or what is even possible to build AI. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to show you our weekly Wednesday speaker, and the topic was about transactional IoT. And why am I switching gears right in the middle of our climate talk? Because transactional IoT is about using, it's a business model, transactional charge for energy consumption using microgrid. So when we talk about climate change and we talk about, we talk about energy consumption and it being this sustainable, this is perfect. So I'm going to show you that because that was a conversation we had. I'll show you the resource or the recording behind it, and then we will come back. I want to look at this climate justice, climate change AI, because I want to tell you what is your role when you're thinking about AI, because AI is never built by one person. Whatever we see about AI can track the wind levels and AI can do, energy saving is 1,000-foot view. So I like to go between the gap between the high level promises to the depths of technology and help you understand. And you don't need to be a coder, because I teach my courses using no code AI. And I would like you to understand, how do you look at it based on what your roles are, where you're coming from, how do you build AI, how do you contribute to building AI, how do you contribute to bringing your experience from any industry that you're involved in, and how do you do this in such a way that it is ethical and inclusive. And whenever we talk about inclusive AI, we have a course on inclusive AI that's just coming to a wrap with AI ethicist Susanna Raj. And whenever we talk about AI, inclusive AI, people always think that, oh, this bad thing is happening to the other person. So they're always thinking about it as the other. And I just want to remind you that every one of us is training data. We are being acted upon by AI, whether we like it or not, whether we are aware of it or not. And so we have the choice to adapt that and do something about it. So we'll talk about that. So first, I'm going to switch to the weekly WED to show you the recording. And then I'm going to come back to this climate report. And then we will drill down and see why it matters to you. And then I have some jobs that I want to share. And of course, I will share all those jobs in the list in the newsletter that I already showed you about. Okay. And I'm hearing from some people, they're not seeing this on LinkedIn. I apologize, guys. So I actually shared the link for the Twitter stream. So if that is of interest to you, you can join me there. Or I will make sure this streams back into LinkedIn after I'm done with this. Okay. So I'm going back to sharing my screen, and okay. I've been talking about emotions AI and how emotions AI is not built on sound science. So we're doing this project. I'm working on a paper about inclusive AI in autonomous vehicles. No, it's not the trolley problem. And so as part of it, we are looking at some facial detection and stuff. And all the technology companies have emotions AI, and it is not built on sound science. So they're going to predict whether I'm angry or happy or sad and do something about it. But there's no basis to it or why you should believe it. Anything other than I could actually, flip a coin and say, you're happy, you're sad. Or I could just say, you're wearing green in a green background, you're very envious today. That could be my construct. So just want you to keep that in the back of your mind as you're listening to different things. And I told you about emotions because as I was sharing the screen, YouTube showed me something about emotional, and I just saw that in a flip. I don't know what that is. It's just a recommendation. I'm not going to click and go there. Okay. So we had Toby Considine as our speaker. So Weekly Wednesday is a speaker series that happens on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. here in Pacific time, which is 18 hours in Europe and 1 p.m. in Brazil. And we have a speaker, and it is hosted by one of my student alums, Yash Yashwani. She goes by Yash. And we have Henry Mulak, who's a journalist from NBC, who comes in, watches this, asks the tough questions, and writes out a very beautiful blog. So if you go to medium.com/business school of AI, you can see Henry's blog. And then Yash makes sure that we get the recording of this. So this recording is going to be out in your newsletter at bit.ly/Jamte newsletter, or I'm going to show you a little snippet of what Toby was telling us. Okay. And Toby is an expert in the energy industry for many years, has helped the US government with building a roadmap for energy management. So here, let's listen to Toby.
Work at any given time. So if you and your neighbor across the street and somebody else all turned on your air conditioners at the same time, it was just in the noise. Nobody noticed, nobody cared. It didn't destroy power quality. Today, we're working routinely at under 10% operating margin. And well, I know in my house, in warm spring and summer days, I cannot run my dishwasher with the electronic controls if after about 9 in the morning, because the air conditioners going down are going to cause enough power quality problems that the digital electronics in my house is confused. So this kind of problem is becoming more and more prevalent, whether or not there's things dramatic such as turning off towns. And so how do we deal with it? How do we make things that interoperate at scale? And at scale, this means continents at a time, or perhaps the whole world. That's a big scale. First, I'd like to define a term, which is transactive resource management. Transactive resource management is one of my favorite concepts for integration, because it relies on emergent order rather than central control for things. I think it's the last and the greatest gift from the Palo Alto Research Center to the world. Palo Alto Research Center is famous for giving us the mouse, the window interface, the stuff that came to be Ethernet, laser printers. A number of things came out of that think tank. But in the early 90s, they were dissatisfied with the comfort they were getting from the single furnace that they had in the basement. Bernardo Huberman and others set up a market where the various heating grills throughout the building would bid for the output of the furnace over time. And so a particular room that was feeling particularly cold or uncomfortable would bid higher. And they used this to allocate the power, the heat coming from that one furnace. Comfort levels went up. Overall budget for heating the building went down. It was a great success. And I've got all the links down below on the bottom of the screen for anybody who wants to review that stuff. But it's a well-known and well-understood capability. Later on, Ed Caslett, who had at one time was the CEO of California ISO, pioneered consumer markets for electricity. And he came up with the term transactive energy. So, and that was in the early 2000s. So this has been out here for 20 years, but it's little understood and little thought of, largely because of interoperability and lack of standards. So maybe my utility does offer me transactive energy, but I can't buy software from across state lines that knows how to talk to it, because everybody's different, everybody does it different ways. So in the National Smart Grid process, well, let me go back. I have a tendency to fall into inside politics and standards, and that's boring for everyone. So let's just define some terms. A resource is a commodity whose value to an individual is determined by the time of day it is delivered. So power is like that. Power at 2 a.m. is an entirely different product than power at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
It's just got different value. And that value is determined by what other people want to do with power. So what transactive resource management is you create markets that are in time, basically bidding for time slots of delivery, and you clear it over time. And to think about it, it's always easiest to think about it in a house, because we all think we know how our houses work. You might have a limited budget coming from your solar panel. Let's leave out the grid and anything else like any other complexity like that right now. And what you want is, you don't want your dishwasher and your refrigerator and your air conditioner to run at the same time, because then you'll blow out your inverter. You'll be offline for 6 weeks, and that'll make you unhappy. But you don't want to have to teach your dishwasher about the air conditioner. You don't want to have to teach your air conditioner about the refrigerator. You want these all to be agnostic at each other. Well, if the air conditioner is running and it's made a power buy against the local power market for the next internal house to the house power market for the next 7 minutes, the refrigerator can look at that and say, you know, I don't mind holding off the cooling cycle for a few minutes. It's not going to hurt the services that I provide, and I can get my power more cheaply. So then, instead of having things stacking on top of each other, they smooth out spontaneously to get smooth power use over time. Now, if the power supply is volatile, that's a minor difference. It still can align supply and demand. We know how this works. I know in America, we can walk in any grocery store and get blueberries any day of the year. Now, they'll be more expensive sometimes than others, but if I really want them, I can get them. And if I only kind of want them, I'll look and say, ooh, that's too much. We know about prices over time. This just applies this to daily cycles of life, such as energy, such as water. I've seen it used for natural gas pipeline allocation in Europe. I've seen it used in data centers to schedule large block transfers between servers. Thermal delivery, of course, is where we started on this. I've seen it used in transactive agriculture. So these are these growing principles that are starting out there that are beginning to be well understood.
Okay, so hope you get the idea. And I'll be sharing the link for the weekly Wednesday with Toby, and hope you're able to come and watch that and listen to the whole thing. So for those of you who are already watching here, I'm going to reply and write here, weekly wed from Toby. Transactional. That's it. Yep. Let me make sure I have Toby spelling right. Let's see down. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. Okay. So I want to pause and see, when I'm talking about energy, I didn't want to do the usual, oh my God, the earth is warming up and we feel helpless, or we are going to build AI because there's tons of data and we can find about wind turbines and weather patterns, or just say, okay, energy saving, right? So I wanted to get you like all the examples that Toby was saying. And one of them was data centers, and that goes back to making AI. So we are making AI to do, to manage climate change. And that AI itself is going to cost more data centers and processing power, and it is going to cost energy. And so that's kind of counterintuitive to that. So I wanted you to get that in perspective on that. Yeah. I want to see whether you have any questions, comments for me. And then I am going to jump in and move on to our next segment, which I promised. Okay. Okay. So some of you who could not join on LinkedIn, I apologize. I will be sharing this with you. So you can be sure to come back and watch it if you just want to watch it on LinkedIn. There's no problem. Okay. So going back to the climate report. And for those of you who are very particularly here just for the job thing, let me share a job listing that came from Rebecca Tweed. I recommend you follow Rebecca Tweed because she has all kinds of responsible tech jobs. Here is Rebecca's job. It is at responsibletechguide.com, and she is sharing a whole bunch of jobs which are in academia. So it's responsible tech, professor jobs, research jobs, some tenure tracks. It's just amazing. I don't know how she does this. She just has her pulse on all possible jobs. And so I would recommend you follow her. That is the easiest way. And even looking at these jobs, looking at what areas of research people are having will be good. This University of Virginia School of Data Science has a whole bunch of data science and general faculty jobs. And this is where AI ethicist Renee Cummings works, and she has shared this before. So follow her work to get a sense of what are they doing in University of Virginia in terms of responsible tech. Again, I have no affiliation with any of them. I'm thankful to all of you who are coming and sharing these jobs and resources and everything else with me. I appreciate it. Okay. So the other thing that I have for you is there's already a bunch of open jobs. I'm going to keep them when I share this on the newsletter. I'm just going to leave them behind so that those that are already open, you can continue to watch them. Yeah. Okay. So there is IoT cybersecurity technical specialist at IoT Security Foundation. And the hiring manager is John Moore, and the deadline for that is November 30th. So I would recommend you go check that out. If you're in UK, this job could be for you. Let me again show you share the screen and show that to you so you can see who is John Moore, follow John Moore. And then if this is of interest to you or any of your friends and colleagues, maybe, you can recommend them for this job. Yeah, there's John Moore. Thank you, John Moore, for sharing that. There's a lot more jobs. I'm not just going to go through these jobs one at a time. There's a bunch of UX design intern jobs for summer 22 that Anna Cook had shared with us, client services associate at Deep Bench. There's a FP&A analytics, marketing, sales, product engineering, all of those jobs from Manish Patel from London. The jobs are in Berlin or Zurich. There's research scientist AI ethics from Tokyo, but the job is listed as remote. This is from Sony. And so I would recommend you check it out. Okay. So the other interesting thing is there's been a bunch of events happening all through this week. And I have been involved in one of them myself. I'm going to show you a little bit of that if that's interesting for you. Let me see if I have that window open. I don't. So I'm going to go back and show you that. One second. So JLL is this big real estate company, and they organized a series of events. Are you seeing the live stream? No, you're not. I need to share this. Okay. So JLL, here is JLL, and they're also on LinkedIn if you just want to follow them. So they shared a whole bunch of ideas. So one of the top topics which we did not anticipate when we were thinking about the pandemic is people thought, okay, we are here, we want to go back, and we are waiting for the normal, and then the normal shifted. And so we got used to working from home. And so a lot of things have changed within this time now when we are saying the pandemic is almost over, but it's not over. And we want to travel, we want to go back to work. What does that look like? So JLL just wanted to spark new ideas. And I'm a huge, huge fan of Chloe Cho, and she was our producer. She did such a fantastic job. So she's done a series called The Future of Capital. Under this, it's on demand. You can sign up and watch any of them. The Future of Logistics. And I was involved. Here is me. The Future of Workplaces. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of that.
Increasing rapidly.
Okay.
Emission reduction.
Skip that.
And what would you make of the productivity and the psychological thinking behind this experience?
So there were a couple of my colleagues here. We covered the psychological behavior analytics aspect of it. What did it mean for the building industry? And then what did it mean for a huge client who was in commercial real estate? So let me see if I can, oh, that's me. Let's see the context of the question, right? Let's hear from Richard first.
But that's not going to be predictive of a longer term performance where you need innovative chats, complex problem solving through collaboration, etc. And I think part of the future workplace is going to be to create and add conditions where that kind of work can be done. So as we go back, it's because we're recognizing that we're missing something in the human connection element of work that the digital connectivity isn't giving us.
Yeah, some very interesting comments coming from Jeremy and Richard. Sudha, you must have lots to say here. After all, you are an AI expert. You even coined the term AIX, AI experience. So what are your thoughts? Was it such a good thing that the world got connected in an unprecedented way? Some people say that this COVID-19 pandemic actually brought the level of technology innovation forward by as much as 10, 20 years. From the way you look at it, what do you make of Richard's comments? After all, he's saying loss of freedom, surveillance, my goodness, and yet you still see this progressing even further?
So yes, one of the things that happened with the pandemic is we were forced to work from home and have screens to connect to the world. And so that brought in more technology, more cameras. And by being online, there is so much data. And so yes, at a psychological level, we could be productive alone and we miss that connection. But there is so much data of us working, staring at the screen, attempting to collaborate on a 2D screen environment. So all the data is, first, it is feeding AI because all AI is trained by data. And second thing is, it has created innovation because now we want technology to do more. Earlier, it was we would go to work and we could collaborate and have that connection. And then when we work remotely, we could be productive, or on demand, we could connect for a little bit. So now suddenly we need to get creative. And that is where the opportunity for innovation is, where technology is expected to personalize the experience. Employers now get access to us, our emotions, when we are on the screen. Who do we collaborate with? How much time are we really in front of the screen? Is the time in front of the screen the productive time, or is it something else? So it just opens up a lot of problems to solve, which calls for innovation. So technology boom and is calling for more innovation, essentially.
That's fascinating, Sudha. So after all, Xiaomei, what Sudha is saying is that essentially it's a good thing that AI took a notch higher in this world due to the pandemic. And you're the person implementing all of these high impact ideas on the ground. UBS has 4,000 staff members here in Singapore and thousands more all around Southeast Asia. As different markets recover from the virus at different paces, you're the one putting all those people. How are you managing expectations?
I have to say, actually, it's been a tug of war during this period. And I see this as a transition, from where we were when COVID started to moving into new normal. So, all that, the panelists have said, that there's definitely certain elements of truth, sorry.
Yes.
But different locations and different roles are actually right now in that transitory phase, whereby certainly the management want to see more people back. But at the same time, the staff, depending again on the location, may not actually want to come back as quickly. As the management would like. So it's a bit of a gray area. What we're doing now, it's really trying to make sure that the workplace continues to be the great enabler.
I certainly hope so.
It has to be. That's like a 101, right? For what we do in our function. But at the same time, we do need to recognize that whilst the workplace is the enabler, IT has to be the catalyst to achieve whatever it is that we need to. So whether it's actually to have that split of working from home, the hybrid model of having people work from home and also be able to come back to the office and collaborate at the same time, in region, out of the region, across different offices, because business travel now has been curtailed tremendously. All these come into play.
Yeah. Okay. So you get the idea. So hope you will be able to follow along and watch that. So I will be sharing that link to here, guys. So let me go back. So JLL future of workplace. Okay. Here we are. And one thing one of our panelists, Dr. Richard, said was, we go back to work. We want to go back to work because we want to connect, we want to collaborate, and we want to learn. So for me, that, it's obvious when you're sitting in a 2D screen and not meeting your colleagues, or, that part of wanting to connect, I can relate to that. We want to collaborate so we can be more productive and get things done. And we're used to doing certain processes in a certain way. So I can understand that. The part about learn, that you want to go back to learn, was amazing for me. So when we're thinking of learning, when we go and say, for me, I worked in eBay for many years. And I used to work in product management earlier, and then I used to head mobile analytics, which was, team of analysts looking at data to support the product team and the growth and to drive business growth. And so there's a lot of collaboration. I understood that. But if I look back, I can see what I have learned about industry, about data, about our customers, about, the business acumen that you develop by doing a job is very intertwined with the people you interact with, the caliber of people who are as passionate about serving the customers, who are passionate and knowledgeable about doing data right. There's a lot of learning that goes in, and, our own confidence of what we know also comes from there. So it's very fascinating. I am thankful to Richard for bringing that point, because I had not thought about it that way. So with that, I am going to come back to what we started this out about the climate AI. And I promised to show you a little bit of the report. So let me show you. It is climatechange.ai/summaries. So I'm going to put that also back here in my thread. Let me go back, and I'm going to say, here is climate change AI report. So as I said, this did not have enough people from the Global South. So if you're one of them working on it, I would love for you to connect with them or with me to, help you connect back with these people, because that is important. So I'm a huge fan of Tejumade Afonso. Let me see if I can locate her. Tejumade. So Tejumade is a data scientist, brilliant data scientist, and she's the co-founder of AI Saturdays. So one of the things I like to do when I'm talking about opportunities and resources, I want you to connect with the right people. I don't want you to just connect with me, come and listen to me. I want you to connect with the right people who are going to, expand your thinking with new research, inspiration, and, knowledge and everything, right? So here is Tejumade Afonso. She is currently in Germany. She's a master's student, and she co-founded AI Saturdays, and she works on language models and using deep learning. She is brilliant. And we had actually interviewed a couple more folks that she had brought in from AI Saturdays during IoT Day. We did this women's training event, and the women's trained deep learning for us. So it was amazing. So she has some published research about bringing language models for African languages. But I want to see, are there other people out there who are working on climate? I know there was work done in Rwanda related to climate and AI, but I don't know those people. So if you're watching, I definitely want to connect with those people. The more diverse thinking we have, and when we are sitting and building AI, you're building a deep learning model. It doesn't matter whether you went to school in Nigeria or whether you're sitting and working in Germany. You are building using with data, but your lived truth is going to contribute to the use cases you develop. So that is what I said in the beginning. When I went through my experience of, facing a flood when I was a child in India, and when I see a flood here in San Jose, and I'm still sitting in Silicon Valley, and I'm not drowned, and I'm not gone to that place of trauma, my lived truth is relatively very marginal compared to somebody else whose house is getting flooded in some place out there. And I'm just talking about flooding, right? There could be, and there are wildfires in different parts of California, and we have people who are building drones to go after the wildfire has burnt the area, to go and figure out how to help plant the right forest back again. And there's a lot of different possibilities of what you can do. And you're going to come from a place of your lived truth and your experience and your passion. And so we go through that exercise in our classes. And so before I show you the use cases for the climate change AI, I wanted to share that with you. Let me see whether I have that ready here. Let me see. So I have a class called, it used to be called Capstone Lab. It's called No Code AI, Data Science for Business Users. That's what this current version of the class is called. Essentially what we do is we teach business users, product managers, to take a business problem and arrive at a problem statement. So when you're asking a data scientist to build AI, they would say, what do you want the AI to do? Where's the data? They're going to take the data that you give as is. They're going to look for patterns in the data. They're going to say, is this a regression model? This is a classification model. This is anomaly detection. What am I doing? And they're going to try to build a model. And their definition of performance of the model is performance of the AI accuracy, right? So what is the recall? What is the precision? Can we optimize it? Is what they're going for. As a business person, your job is to get them the right use case, do feature engineering, make sure the right columns are there, because AI in the data set, and AI is going to understand only data. So you have to translate what your business ask is into a language of data. And that is what you're learning when you're learning to build AI. Essentially, that's what you're learning, to talk the language of data. Right. So let me share this quickly, and then we are going to review the use cases, and then we're going to wrap up. So I have a framework called the 4P approach to problem statement. So basically, we start with what is the business problem. Previously, the class brainstorms a lot of different use cases, and then they say, okay, what is the business problem? In this case, in our current class, what we're doing, we're running this as live lab. So it's not just theory. So we have a business, we work with a company who has a business problem. They give us the data. We will listen from multiple stakeholders, define the business problem differently, and then narrow it down. Sometimes they help prioritize it. Sometimes we just, I guide the class to just prioritize to one business problem. We drill down and say, what is the root cause? What is the root cause? Why is this problem even material? Then we drill down and say, who are the people who are affected by it? What are the different personas? Who are the different stakeholders? They would have different things. Somebody would want a regression model built to look at what are the top factors. Somebody would want a classification model built to say, for this particular scenario, tell me yes or no, is this going to be a success? And then you say, okay, if we assume I'm going to give you the problem solved using an AI, what are you going to do with it? Is it actionable? Can you do something with it? This is very important before we go and look at climate AI, because I can just show you the list and you say, wow, these are amazing things they're doing. These are some of the AI I could build. It doesn't mean a thing if you don't understand what is your role in building that AI, and that it has to be actionable. There are going to be multiple stakeholders. In the climate justice world, there are companies who are polluting the environment. There are people who are saying, hey, we need to build sustainable energy. There are people like Toby who are building transactional IoT models for energy consumption. Then there are data scientists who are building amazing models to look at vast volume of data, independent of whatever the realm is. So how do you balance the different stakeholders? Go back to solving specific business problems and find out what is your role. Are you the person who has the business acumen, who can do feature engineering, make sure you get the right data? Are you the person who can prioritize the use cases to arrive at forming a solution? If an AI says, okay, I'm going to be able to predict weather pattern, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to evacuate people? If you are the mayor, you could go evacuate people from the town. Maybe you can actually look at that and say, okay, what can I do? If I live there, I can pack up and run. So it's going to be different things each of us are going to do if the AI is going to make a prediction about flooding, back to my story here, right? So think about it in a drill down fashion. What is the problem? Why does it matter? What is the root cause? Who is the stakeholder I'm representing here? Who I'm not representing? They're going to come back and find fault with my model. And then how am I going to make it actionable? How do I know? Because AI is always learning in an iterative fashion. So if I get the data, if I get and train the model and I get the model, now what? The model says something. How do I bring the output learning back to it to iterate and improve the model? So all that becomes important. So to close out, I am going to go to the climate change AI that I started from. So what they've done is they've done a beautiful interactive summary. This is the last part of our session today. So they've built some interactive summaries and they've made beautiful. I've never seen anybody do papers like this. So they have different sections. So if you're interested in climate forecast, or you're thinking about societal impact, or you're thinking about collective decision, or you're thinking about transportation, right? Or you can take specific keywords, or like, thematic keywords, or it could be, machine learning language related keywords. So for each of them, so let's take, we spoke a lot about energy, so I'm not going to go there. They actually have a drill down understanding transportation data. So there are many areas of transportation that lack data. Decision makers are often planning infrastructure and policy based on this uncertain information. So they are saying machine learning can help provide relevant information about the transportation systems. So previously, last week, we had Sarah Abroff, who was the emerging mobility manager from City of San Jose. So she will benefit from having information to this data. In fact, one of the things I have spoken about in the past is MDS, or mobility data specification. So if you say mobility data specification and go, Google it and find from any city, or if you come to Weekly Wednesday on Business School of AI, if you're signed up, you get access to past recordings and you will see Sarah's stuff, and we can see, the other MDS stuff that we're doing. So this mobility data specification is an open data, is from Open Data Foundation. And so it's open, right? So all the mobility providers provide data to the city, and city publishes reports based on that to create transparency. So we could look at that. So one of the things I do with my team of amazing instructors at Business School of AI is we use mobility data specification, MDS data, to actually learn machine learning, natural language processing, any of our projects, data science for business uses, everything no code AI, we actually use MDS to go look at that. So understanding data, transportation data, or you can model demand. So they're saying, okay, you can forecast demand or you can model demand. They're two different things, right? And especially in US, we have this infrastructure bill that's passed. So a lot of different parts of the country are all thinking about what is it that they are getting, and it's different. Somewhere they're going to build a seawall, somewhere they're going to use it for education. There's a lot of different things in terms of transportation itself. And then shared mobility is my favorite one. We've been, dealing with KiwiBot, so you can look at that. Or it could be that you're in supply chain and freight routing, which is a very critical issue now in US. So, especially with the pandemic, it's not limited to US, it's a global thing. So you could look at that. So this is just there, or you could look at modeling, building energy. I have previously shared from Stanford's Energy Week a couple of years back about all the different papers and a lot of research related to building management and energy. It's amazing stuff. So even if you're new to the whole world of AI, this is something, there's a lot of public data available. You can look at that. And then you want to understand data for smart cities. I already told you about that. Looking at data for smart cities from the city perspective is different from looking at data for transportation, which impacts cities. Of course, my favorite topic, autonomous vehicles. There's a whole bunch, right? Industry, clean energy, we saw using cleaner energy. And then Toby mentioned farms, drip irrigation and management, so precision agriculture. We've had a previous speaker come and talk to us about precision agriculture, also using autonomous tractors from John Deere. So there's so many different options. And then the most common thing we can hear about is climate prediction. So each of this goes into the detail of the report. So you can go look into the report, and then you can figure out what is the area that you want to do. And if you're new to AI, you can just pretend that you're there in the team doing this, and then go through that and say, okay, now how will I build this? How will I use this? What is my role? What kind of data will I be using? It's a great tool to actually go and enhance your learning in AI. If you're working in AI, you want to collaborate with these people, great. If you want to bring this to a country that is not represented in the report, even better. But if you're just watching this, new to AI, go look at that. It's a great starting point. For me, I always learn when I go to a place where I don't know something. And I just feel like I'm the edge of learning. And then it's like, whoa, it's amazing. A whole new world of things I can learn. So hope you'll join me on the journey and share my excitement for AI and bring it in an inclusive way to go do something good to your world. However you define your world, it doesn't matter. It could be your country, it could be your home, it could be, your body, it could be, the climate and the world, or going to space. With that, I'm going to wrap up. In fact, next Weekly Wednesday on Wednesday, we have Craig Pritzky, who's going to be talking about space technology. So go to businessschoolofai.com and click on Weekly Wed at the top, join us, and hopefully you'll join us, and we'll have a fun conversation and we'll learn about space tech. And do spend your time to look at this whole climate AI that I've shared, or this future of work workplace, not workforce, that I showed you. And with that, I'm going to wrap up, and be sure to sign up to bit.ly/Jamte newsletter. And thank you everybody who gave me feedback on what I should do with my LinkedIn newsletter. So look out for that. I'm going to be sharing that shortly. If you're following me on LinkedIn, I think it will show up. And I appreciate all the ideas. So I'm not going to repeat the Jamte newsletter and put it back on LinkedIn. I'm going to keep it small and succinct, and go back to my favorite place of, going between the business and tech and bring pluralistic discussion. So look out for that. With that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. Have a beautiful weekend. And I will see you next week. And in fact, I'm going to be starting to teach the AI ethics course at Barcelona Technology School next Wednesday. So hello to my BTS students. So thank you, everybody. And you know to find me in all my channels. And I will see you there. And I will also be sure to share this at Business School of AI if you're following Business School of AI on LinkedIn also. Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye. I'm going to stop the live stream first. Then I'm going to stop the recording here. Bye, everybody.